In this video of Middle-earth Mysteries, we're covering a mystery that is rather close to my heart. It's probably the first mystery I discovered when learning about Middle-earth. I was probably about 10 or 11 when I noticed an anomaly in the appendices. In the list of the kings of Arnor, one king mysteriously died rather early in his life, without any cause of death being given. In this video, let's look at Valandr, 8th king of Arnor. I'm not exaggerating about how I came across this mystery. I loved the lists of kings, seeing how long they lived for and how long they ruled for. I used to neatly write down the lists in back of old school books. What a nerd I was. Naturally, it didn't take long for me to notice that Valandr, the 8th king of Arnor, lived a significantly shorter life than both his predecessor and successor. Valandr lived to be 190, his father, Torondor, lived to be 230, and his son, Elendr, lived to be 225. So Valandr died almost 40 years earlier than he should have. What's strange about this? No cause of death is ever given, and during Valandr's reign, from what we know, Arnor is meant to be at peace. So what could have possibly happened to Valandr? If you just look at the appendices, you can assume that Valandr might have just had a bit of ill fortune, and that his death doesn't represent a greater unknown issue that was occurring at the time. In the appendices, Valandr has a little cross next to his name, indicating a premature death, but not necessarily a violent death. We know this because King Telemnar of Gondor died of plague, but still has a cross next to his name. Likewise, Eanil I of Gondor and Arvedui of Arthedain both drowned and also had a cross next to their name. Considering that we're never told that anything bad is happening in Arnor at the time, like I said earlier, you could just assume that Valandr had some bad luck. He might have got sick and died, a massive rarity given it only happened to one other Dunedain king during a devastating event that killed millions, but still a possibility. Like Arvedui and Eanil I, Valandr might have drowned, perhaps in a river or in Lake Evendim, or it might have been something as mundane as falling from his horse or dying during a hunting accident. In actual history, these things happened a lot. But there is a bit of evidence that debunks all of these theories. In the History of Middle-earth book, War of the Jewels, you can find something called the Grey Annals. The Grey Annals were an earlier draft of Middle-earth's timeline, and are a little more detailed than the ones that would appear in the appendices. The timeline is mostly the same. Some of the minor details are different, as are the names, but apart from that, it's quite similar. Our important piece of evidence in the Grey Annals is in the list of the kings of Arnor. Next to Valandr's name, it has his date of death, and it says that he was slain. Slain, in this context, meaning being killed violently by a man or some other creature. And Tolkien does note the difference. With Arvedui, he uses the word drowned. Okay, so Valandr was killed violently, which really spices things up. It basically leaves two options. Valandr was either killed in some sort of battle or conflict, or alternatively, he was murdered. So which is it? That's the thing we don't know, and that's why it is a mystery. But we can definitely come up with theories as to why it might have been one or the other. So what about being slain violently? I don't know why I wrote down slain violently. Is there a way you can be slain peacefully? I'm not sure. Now, this one is definitely a possibility. According to the timeline, Arnor is at peace during this time. There hasn't yet been a division, and there's still centuries to go before Angmar rises in the north. But that doesn't mean violence didn't occur. Specifically, within the lands that would later become Rhudaur, we know the mysterious Hillmen, who will eventually get their own video by the way, and the Dunedain, they didn't get along. This eventually resulted in the local Hillmen overthrowing the Dunedain and aligning with Angmar against the rest of Arnor. This could mean that during Valandr's reign, there was a violent uprising in Rhudaur, and that the king may have been killed while trying to squash it. Speaking of Angmar, although it would not rise as a proper kingdom until 1300, it's possible that there were hostile men living there at this point in time. We don't know for sure. Like the Hillmen of Rhudaur, the origins of the men of Angmar are completely unknown. They're not even given a proper name, only being referred to once as the men of Kharn Dûm. It's possible that even before the Witch King arrived, these hostile men would launch small-scale invasions or raids into Arnorian territory, and that in one such attack, Valandr was killed. These invasions are never mentioned, but them, alongside ethnic uprisings, might help explain why Arnor continued to weaken in times of apparent peace, and why Valandr was mysteriously slain during one of these so-called peaceful periods. Of course, it could have also been due to internal strife. We know that only 2 centuries later, at the end of the reign of Valandr's grandson Eärendil, Arnor would divide into 3 smaller realms, Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rhudaur. The reason given for this division and civil war is dissension among the sons, but the cause for this dissension is never given. It's very much possible that the reason was simply jealousy between the brothers, and that was it. But it's also possible that this was an issue that might have gone back generations, and that each of the brothers may have represented a faction or cause within Arnorian politics to secure their own power. We can only guess what these issues might have been, or what these factions may have represented. So it might be possible that Valandr was a victim of politics, perhaps being killed in an internal uprising or minor civil war, or perhaps even being murdered by a political opponent. Given similar things happened in Gondor after the Kin strife, there's no reason why they wouldn't happen in Arnor. In that way, Valandr's death might have been a precursor to the struggles that would eventually rip Arnor apart. Subsequent kings such as Elendil and Eärendil might have been able to subdue it, only for it to fully erupt when Amleth became king. In the end, we don't know, and the unfortunate reality is that we probably never will know. In the appendices of The Lord of the Rings, we'll always have Valandr, 8th King of Arnor, slain in mysterious circumstances that history either didn't deem important, or more likely, that history forgot. We won't know who did it, why they did it, how it happened, and the effects it had on Arnor as a whole. So, headcanon away. Tell me your thoughts and theories, and if you can't come up with a serious one, give me a real outlandish one because it'll be hilarious, and I'll pin the best one. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it or at least found it interesting. If you have any mysteries or video ideas, please feel free to suggest them. I do read them. Also, if you've asked questions in the comments before and I haven't answered, don't worry, I'm not ignoring you. I just sometimes think they're better left for a video because they're either too long or too complex. Thanks again to my patrons, I really appreciate your support. Cheers, farewell, and remember, dying violently in peacetime is an alpha move that will ensure you get remembered. Or not actually. Actually, I feel like the whole video just proved that point is not true. Anyway,